Many thanks for staying tuned. It's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. Of course, our first conversation this morning will center around the issues currently at the National Assembly, the Senate, regarding the Senate President Godswill Akpabio and Senator Natasha Akpabio. And of course, the news went round that Senator Natasha had been suspended for 6 months for unethical conduct, for breaking some of the House rules, that is the Senate rules. And of course, the question many are also asking is if truly there were issues of sexual harassment or sexual allegations, should the Senate President have presided over that sitting where Senator Natasha was handed that, I wouldn't say judgment now because it's not a court. But of course, let's take a look at this conversation and, of course, the unfolding issues in that particular scenario. And we have joining the studio now a journalist as well as a public affairs analyst, Adewale Adeoye. Thank you, Mr. Adeoye, for being here.
Good morning.
On the program
Thank
today. Of course, we've been back and forth this issue for a few weeks, and when this came out, what broke the camel's back was when Senator Natasha actually came on live television, and she again vehemently did say that she was harassed by the Senate President, and she even went ahead to cry on national television. But for you, with what has gone wrong, and looking at how this case has played out, is there anything you can actually make out of this whole situation?
Well, I think there are a lot of issues that are tied to this debate. The first one is that these incidents happened in the week of the International Day of Women that is celebrated all over the world. And then that's a very significant day marked by over 160 countries. And the issue that dominated the scene on issues of women in Nigeria, unfortunately, is the allegation against the Senate President, who is supposed to be the custodian of moral authority, one of the custodians of moral authority of the country. So I think it was a very unfortunate thing that that incident came at that time. Secondly, we also need to admit that there is issue of gender in Nigerian politics in terms of women representation. For instance, how many women do we have in the Senate as we speak? I think we just have about 4. And in the House of Representatives, we have just about maybe about 34 or so. So when you are talking about women empowerment, inclusion, our political economy is still defined in a way that women are less recognized. They are excluded from the scheme of things. Our society is being guided by a lot of superstitious beliefs that women should be, in the kitchen, should be relegated, should not take part in a political power sharing arrangement, which affects and plays out in national politics. If you compare what happens in Nigeria with what you have in a country like Rwanda, where you have about 24 seats reserved mainly for women. In Uganda, you have about 146 seats out of 557 reserved for women. So when we are talking about democratic advancement, this is one of the fault lines, in Nigeria. In 2015, we had 7 female senators. So it has reduced from 7 to 4. And in this whole conversation, you discover that, when the woman raised the issue of, sexual harassment, there are people whose utterances, indicated that they were not actually interested in whether that allegation was true or not. But the audacity that in a parliament dominated by men, why should she have that kind of courage? And in the past, we have seen such issues dismissed, with ignominy. There was a senator that uttered, that spoke and said, I will impregnate a senator. And those who are, the Senate president at that time is not the one saying that they should set up investigation to as if when that happened, because it was a Senate. Nothing was done because probably it was uttered by a man. And if this had happened in a place like Uganda and South Africa, that's a very serious issue. A senator uttering that kind of, very irresponsible way. So we've seen consistently where women are marginalized, in our political affairs. And I think we should take that and put it, as in our reserve in debating this issue. When that committee was set up, in the Committee for Privileges and Ethics and Privileges, I'm not sure how many women were in that committee. So that's a major issue. And also the other important thing we should also take home is that this issue happened December 8th, because we have to look at both sides. That she said she went to, to the celebration of the the Senate President's birthday with her husband. So if this thing happened December 8th, maybe she should have reported it earlier. And not wait for more than almost going to 2 months before coming up, with that kind of allegation. And also at the time that she was moved from the chairman of the committee of, moved to a committee on diaspora instead of local content, chairman of committee on local content. So raising that issue at that time made people to wonder why didn't you raise, even though you claim that your husband was aware. So there might be many reasons accountable for that. Maybe out of fear that if she had raised that issue, nothing would have happened. Or out of maybe at this time she now felt that, this is actually the time for me to raise the right time to speak it, because she's now facing greater heat, from the parliament. So I think in all this, the take home is that as we speak, the truth is yet to be established. Right. Was she sexually harassed? What was the form of the harassment? Was it verbally? Was it physically? We have been robbed the opportunity of learning through the process what actually happened. And I think in all this conversation, Nigerians deserve to know the truth. What really happened? She had been suspended for 6 months. They said, okay, because she flouted Senate rules. But there's a fundamental issue on the ground. That was not the only issue. She has raised the issue of sexual harassment. And you see people resorted to talking about her personality. But I think that is not the issue here. Right. That, she has multiple husbands and all that. In law, that is what you call, argumentum ad hominem. You are attacking a personality and you are leaving the issue. Even if she's the worst person on earth, but
she still deserves
she deserved to be heard. So I think, and of course, people are talking about that. The Senate President are also been accused of sexual harassment by former acting managing director of NDDC. So she's not the only one in this debate. And one of the senators was saying that, the Senate President needs to joke less. She needs to be more serious. What does she mean by that? Does it mean is he saying that the Senate President jokes with sexual words or romantic words? What is the meaning of that? So when you do a psychoanalysis of that statement that was made by one of the senators, that trying to define, but what does that mean to say that he jokes a lot? Does it mean that he fumbles with women or touches their bodies or illegally, or what does that mean? Okay. So that in itself sends a signal to many of us who can see beyond mere words of our leaders to do a critical analysis of what they say. Okay. So I think establishing the truth in this case is absent, which I think is something that we really need to look at.
Okay, from your narrative so far, so what then becomes the integrity and the reputation of the Senate, and then the quality of leadership that Akpabio is bringing on board? There was a time as well when Natasha wanted to speak, Senator Natasha wanted to speak, and he said this is not a nightclub. Relating that to what you just raised now, it's quite, it has a lot of meanings. And so speak to the integrity of the Senate now, the reputation, and the fact that the former Senate President, Bukola Saraki, did suggest that the Senate President should step aside for thorough investigation to be done.
Well, starting from the issue of integrity, I think if you ask Nigerians, conduct opinion poll, I'm almost sure that majority of Nigerians will doubt the integrity of the Senate for so many reasons. And this has provided another opportunity for the Senate to redeem its image. When an allegation of this magnitude has been made, the normal thing will have been for you to prove yourself that you are clean. Mere suspending the senator has not given you the opportunity to prove yourself. So there is a moral deficit, in this narrative. Regarding the former Senate President saying that he should step aside, we should ask Senator Saraki, when Dino Melaye was, saying all sorts of things, what was his own response at that time? So we need to be very cautious about people who are making statements for political gains, and those who are genuinely concerned about the trauma, the fortunes of Nigerians, and the concern of millions of Nigerians on the street who really want justice to be done. So I don't think that the former Senate president is speaking for us. I think he's speaking for political convenience, because 2027 is very near, and there are people who are looking for opportunities to feast, from this debate for their own political interest.
What about the reputation?
Yeah, there is a...
because there were lawmakers from Britain or so that day. They were present in the chamber of the Senate.
And I think this was why a couple of the senators also berated Senator Natasha that there are House rules to be followed, Senate rules to be followed, and that you do not also wash the dirty linen of the Senate in public. She could have done that by raising Order 10 of the House rules. So how important, as much as you talk about integrity, how important is it to also ensure that senators also understand the rules of the Senate?
Yeah, it's very important for senators to understand the rules of the Senate and to follow such rules. But invoking punishment for disobedience of this rule at this time that one has been accused also raised another issue on its own.
Okay.
So I think if there are senators that flout the House rules, there should be punishment for that. I'm not aware of a case where somebody has been suspended for a whole 6 months, for flouting
House
rules. And probably this is the first time, she was doing that, being a first offender. So I think if that was what the Senate is talking about, I think that punishment is too severe. And also withdrawing, security details and all that, exposing her to danger. I don't think that serves our constituency right. Who have voted for her, who felt they should represent them.
Okay, we also witnessed some kind of contractual protesters in the premises of the National Assembly because of this. Some were supporting Natasha, some were supporting
the Senate President.
A Senate President. And, there was a particular medium that questioned some of these protesters, and they confessed that they were paid 5,000 naira each to come and protest. What does this say about protest in Nigeria and the quality of our democracy? Yeah,
I'm really not surprised, because hiring mercenaries has become pastime of many politicians. If you ask both sides to even talk about the issues, they don't understand. What they only understand is that, look, I'm hungry and I'm being given 5,000 naira to go and protest. Interview one of them. What is the issue at stake? And those people that are protesting on behalf of Akpabio, give them 10,000 naira. They will not mind to cross to the other side of the divide. So it tells you about the decline of moral values in our country. That but the important note is that it is the politician that has funding this moral decadence. They are the one, providing the engine. They are the one providing the fund to encourage people, because they are poor, and you are exploiting their poverty in order to diminish their humanity. So it raises a lot of questions about the integrity of those in power. And I think we need to do a lot, because if those in power behave this way, you cannot be blamed the ordinary man that also tried to copy them. Leaders are supposed to set good examples, to be the pathfinder of integrity, of transparency and honesty. But once our leaders are not showing that pathway, the ordinary people will also follow the same pattern.
So the other day, before Senator Natasha laid her complaints from her constituents before the Senate President did ask her if there was a case in court, and she said no. But now that she's been suspended for 6 months, and like you also rightly pointed out, that punishment is too harsh for whatever it was that she must have done, do you expect that this time round she should seek legal redress?
Well, I think from the statement of our lawyer, Victor Giwa, as at Friday, the lawyer said that the case is in court, that actually they have obtained an interim injunction restraining the Senate from punishing her. But probably the Senate President was yet to be served, as at the time she was suspended. And he said that in the next 2 weeks, the case will be coming up in court. the lawyer is saying that the case has been taken to court, and I think if that is the case, it means that we are not yet at the last chapter of this book. So what happens in the next 2 weeks when the case comes to court should be of interest to all of us.
Okay, so if our senators are behaving this way, then what quality of laws should we expect from them? Because it appears they are losing their eyes on the ball. Instead of focusing on things that are germane to the development of the country, they are trivializing lawmaking, so to say.
When you look at our National Assembly, you cannot compare with the assembly we used to have in the past. In the days of UPN, where you have people like Professor Wande Ambibola, you have our best 11, in the Senate. These days, the driving force for people seeking political power is money. As brilliant as you two are now, if you want to go to the Senate, maybe in your state, there is no guarantee that your intelligence will be of relevance. The first thing is that whether you are ready to play ball, whether you belong to the camp that is controlled by a cartel, whether you also have the funds or the resources. So, and it means that the quality of governance, the quality of dividends of democracy will be affected if you don't have the right people in the Senate. A lot of things have happened in Nigeria that we are expecting that the Senate should look into this matter. Look at what just happened last week, where Kenya electricity was invaded. I would have thought that the Senate would have taken this issue as an issue of national importance. Set up a panel, send people to come down. Why were these people? Why were the office invaded? People beaten up. People harassed, pregnant women, young women, old women, and just went to the office like that and begin to harass everyone. The Senate is not doing anything about that. And I really wonder where there are many justifications why the Air Force is giving one reason or the other, but there is no reason on earth why I'm sure the governor of Lagos State was not aware, the number one security officer. If the Air Force had gone to him and said, look, we have these challenges, I'm sure this governor of Lagos that I know will have resolved this problem. Even either giving them money to pay to Kenya electricity instead of going there, and carrying out a lot of terrorist acts. These are the issues that the Senate should look at. Look at the issue of power supply, what people are going through, the challenges of our military institutions, whether they should even begin to look for ways of providing electricity for themselves instead of relying on private sector. These are serious issues that I think the Senate should look at. But all along, the whole of last week, we were debating about, clubhouse, harassment, and all that. So it's quite unfortunate. It's not as if we don't have people of integrity in the National Assembly. There are, but I don't think we have enough of them as this country deserves.
I'm glad that you mentioned that we do not have enough women. The 9th Assembly, well, at the 10th, right? The 9th Assembly.
It is the 10th.
This is the 10th.
This 10th, yeah.
We had 7 senators. Yeah. Now we have
just about
4.
6.8% of the whole entire population.
Yes, so now we have 4. And one would have thought that the serving and even past senators would all have rallied around Senator Natasha, but we didn't see that. Majority of them, even Senator Ireti Kingibe, did say that it was not about Senator Natasha. It was more about the House rules and all of those. For you, what would you have expected from these women? Even the wife of the president, who was also a senator, also did say that there are rules that should be followed as a senator. Even former Senator Florence Etagiwa did say that as a woman, even as a senator, you cannot be harassed. And so for you, utterances from some of these other women, what would you have expected that they did at that time?
Well, I would have expected the women to rally around their colleague, at least for the sake of womanhood, for the sake of women voters, for the sake of the fact that we have the population of Nigeria is almost about 50-50 women, and also for the future of women. But that didn't happen. But I'm not surprised. Just like I've said, if you look at governors, how many state governors do we have? How many who are women? How many speakers do we have who are women? So when you have a society where you have about 15, you have about 100 lions, and then you have about 5 sheep, when one of the sheep challenges the lion, the other sheep, what would they do? They will rally behind the lion, because they will say, why are you, we have a privilege, why are you trying to, create, to create problems for us? Because there is a culture of intimidation a culture of marginalization. So some of these women would think that, look, I don't want to lose my privileges and my rights and perks and privileges. So I think that is what is playing out. Nobody is courageous enough. Number one, because of their population, then because of the history of the National Assembly itself, that it is notorious for undermining women interests, and of course for cultural values in several parts of the country where women voices are seen as a threat, are seen as abnormal for them to even raise their voices to challenge the status quo. So I think it's a culture of intimidation, it's a culture of subjugation that has, gripped many of the women in the Senate, and they find it very difficult to speak out because they fear their husband may even challenge them. Why are you speaking? Why just keep quiet? So it tells you about the what women go through in Nigeria in terms of their ability to express themselves politically and economically.
Okay,
right,
so I'm sorry to cut you short. I understand we need to take a short break now. We will take a quick break, and after that break, we will digress a little bit, take a little bit of security issues, but we'll still have our guest here in the studio, and of course, we'll be back after this short break.